You may have seen headlines this week talking about a new £10,000 earnings rule from the DWP, supposedly affecting 22 million people. Before we go any further, I want to be straight with you about that number, because at James Brown Pension and Taxes, we only tell you what we can actually stand behind. I've looked into this closely, and I could not find a real DWP policy that matches those exact figures. What I did find is very real, very current, and arguably more important for you to understand properly. So that's what we're covering today, and I promise you, it's just as relevant to your wallet. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm James, and every week we cut through the confusion around pensions, benefits, and taxes, so that people over 60 can make confident decisions with their money. Today, we're talking about the genuine, ongoing story involving the new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, and a pledge that directly affects millions of state pensioners across the UK. This matters right now because the personal tax allowance has been frozen for years, and that freeze is quietly pulling more and more pensioners into paying income tax for the very first time. Stay with me to the end, because the last part of this video covers a mistake I see pensioners make again and again, and it could genuinely cost you money if you're not aware of it. Let's start with the basics. The personal allowance is the amount you can earn in a year before you start paying any income tax at all. Right now, that figure sits at £12,570. For a long time, that number rose each year in line with inflation, which meant pensioners had a bit of breathing room. But that allowance has been frozen, and the state pension keeps rising thanks to the triple lock. The result is what economists call fiscal drag, where more and more people get pulled into paying tax simply because their pension has grown, not because they're actually better off. This matters for anyone whose only income is the state pension, and for anyone with a small private pension or part-time earnings on top. But there is something many people don't realize. The government, under the new Prime Minister, has publicly reaffirmed a commitment that pensioners whose only income is the full state pension will not be made to pay income tax on it during this Parliament. That sounds reassuring on the surface, and it is a genuine pledge worth knowing about. However, charities like Independent Age have raised a serious concern, and this is where it gets important for you. Their worry is that this protection may only apply to pensioners who have no other income at all. If you receive even a small private pension, a part-time wage, or modest savings interest on top of your state pension, you might not be covered by that exemption, even though your total income is still modest. This is where many pensioners make a mistake, assuming that because they're just a pensioner, they're automatically protected. The rules, as they currently stand, are more nuanced than that, and they are still being finalized. How does this work in practice? If your income is close to that £12,570 threshold, from any combination of state pension, private pension, part-time work, or taxable savings interest, you could be liable for a small amount of income tax, usually collected automatically through what's called PAYE, even without you filling in a tax return. Many people are surprised the first time this happens because they've never had to think about tax before. The good news is that HMRC and the DWP do send letters or update your tax code when this changes. So if you notice something new on a payslip or pension statement, don't ignore it. If you're ever unsure, you can check your tax code and personal allowance directly on the gov.uk website, or call HMRC to ask them to explain it in plain terms. There's a common mistake here worth flagging clearly. Some pensioners see a small amount of tax being deducted and assume it's an error, so they simply ignore letters from HMRC, hoping the problem goes away. It doesn't. If anything, ignoring correspondence can lead to confusion further down the line, with either underpayments or overpayments building up. The safest approach is always to open the letter, read it properly, and if anything looks wrong, contact HMRC directly rather than guessing. Let me give you a real lifestyle example to bring this to life. Imagine Margaret, 67 years old, living on her state pension plus a small workplace pension of around £2,000 a year. For years, Margaret assumed she was completely protected from tax because she'd heard pensioners don't pay tax. When her tax code changed last year, she was confused and nearly ignored the letter. After checking with HMRC, she realized that because her combined income had crept just over the personal allowance, a small amount of tax was now due, spread out automatically through her private pension payments rather than as one lump sum. It wasn't a huge amount, but understanding why it happened meant she could plan for it properly instead of being caught off guard. The next point could be especially important, particularly if your income sits right on that borderline. It's always worth checking whether you're eligible for other support that could offset this, such as pension credit, which has its own separate eligibility rules and can also unlock additional benefits, like help with council tax and the warm home discount. Many pensioners miss out on pension credit simply because they assume their savings or small pension disqualify them, when in reality, the rules are more generous than people expect. Now, I do want to be completely clear with you, because trust matters more than views on this channel. Rules like this can and do change, sometimes with very little notice, especially with a new government settling into fiscal policy. Nothing I've said today should be treated as guaranteed for the future, and the exact detail of how the state pension tax exemption will be defined is still being worked out. Please always check the official guidance on gov.uk or speak to Citizens Advice or a qualified advisor before making any decisions based on what you've heard here or anywhere else online. So let me ask you honestly, have you noticed any changes to your tax code recently? Or have you ever been caught out by a letter you didn't understand at first? Let us know in the comments, because chances are, if it's happened to you, it's happened to someone watching this right now who needs to hear it. And if you know someone, a parent, a neighbor, a friend, who this could affect, please share this video with them. It genuinely might save them some stress and some money. To sum up, the frozen personal allowance is quietly pulling more pensioners into the tax system. The government has pledged protection for those relying solely on the state pension. But that protection may not stretch to everyone with a small extra income, and it's still worth checking your own tax code and your eligibility for pension credit today, rather than waiting. If you found this useful, please subscribe to James Brown Pension and Taxes. We put out new videos every week to help you stay informed, confident, and in control of your money. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.